Okay, so a case report is pretty straightforward. It's just a documentation of a particular case, a particular medical occurrence. And so that's one form of knowledge or evidence, but it's anecdotal, and it's a single case. So this is the lowest level of evidence. So the next level up the hierarchy is a case series, which is a set of case reports. So it's a collection of case reports, and you can look at these case reports and see if you can see anything in common across them, which may lead you to develop a hypothesis about what's causing the particular outcome. And the main limitation of these case report and case series is that there's no explicit comparison group. Okay, so an example of a case series that obviously became very important is that of AIDS. So between October 1980 and May 1981, there were identified 5 cases of pneumocystis pneumonia in previously healthy gay men. So this was highly unusual, and these cases were looked at very carefully to try to understand what was going on. And all of these cases occurred in LA, which is why, because they all occurred, in the same general area, that's why people noticed this pattern. So obviously you want to know what is causing this pattern of cases of this type of pneumonia in this particular population. So how do you answer this question? Well, obviously the first thing you would do is look for commonalities across those 5 cases, because if there's one thing that's causing it, it should exist in all of the cases. Okay, so people looked at the commonalities across these cases, and they found a number of things. So they found that all the cases of this type of pneumonia had multiple male sex partners. They also had Kaposi sarcoma, which was also unique, and they used inhalants. And so this led to a more rigorous search for a cause. And so after this case series, a number of cases were discovered. They were created a case definition. Okay, so defining what constitutes a case of this particular illness. And so once there's a case definition, then you can do surveillance and you can do more studies, because until you define what the outcome is that you're looking at, what the disease is, you can't rigorously design a study that will identify the cause. Okay, so now after looking at a number of cases, a case series, they developed a definition, and they called it AIDS. This is the phenomenon, the syndrome that they called AIDS, and so it consisted of a number of different symptoms. These are only 2 of the symptoms that were included. There were a number of others, but this was published, and so now we have a definition. Okay, and so the next step: how do we decide figure out what causes AIDS? Okay, so what do we do? So what we do here, now that we have a definition, we can take a series of cases, so individuals who have AIDS, and then we can compare them to another group of individuals who do not have AIDS and see what the difference is. And so one of the characteristics of AIDS patients at this time was that they tended to be gay men. So, but that's not part of the case definition, and because there are many gay men who did not have AIDS. And so the question is, what differentiated gay men who have AIDS from gay men who do not have AIDS? So a control group was constructed that was matched as well as possible to the AIDS cases. Okay, and so the controls consisted of gay men, but they were gay men who did not have any of these other symptoms of AIDS. So they weren't considered cases of AIDS. Okay, so this is a case control study where you have people with a condition and you're going to compare them to people without the condition. And we'll talk more about this later, but now I'm giving you sort of an evolution of study designs for a particular phenomenon. And so what do you do? So what you want to know is now you have a control group, and so what differentiates the cases from the control? So the results of the study, the outcome of the study, are those behaviors or factors that are true of or are true of the cases, but that are not true of the controls. And so what was found in this very early on case control study was that the AIDS cases had more anal intercourse and other high-risk sexual behaviors, more exposure to drugs, and more partners than the control group. And so this provides greater evidence for the relationship, for a causal relationship between the AIDS outcome and these particular exposures. So ultimately it was discovered that exposure to drugs or inhalants in particular were not causally related to HIV, at least not directly related, but that took many other studies and probably better designed studies to infer that. So originally it was thought that maybe the inhalants themselves were somehow physiologically linked to this outcome. So this shows the importance of case reports and case series. Even though they themselves don't provide good evidence, what they do is they allow for the generation of hypotheses about what might cause the outcome. And also they provide the evidence needed to create a case definition, which is critical for other more rigorous study designs.